Hey everyone, welcome back to Talking Sense. I'm Ben, and today I thought I'd make a video about kind of like training your nose because it's something I never really thought about too much, to be honest. But I got a comment about like a week or so ago from DJ Keen, and he mentioned about kind of how do you go about kind of learning to smell perfume, how do you train in your nose, basically. So I thought, yeah, that's a good idea. I'll make a video about it. I personally, I think largely for me, I mean, I got into perfume in the 90s, like mid 90s, and then kind of like seriously in the early kind of noughts. And I think I never really, a lot of this stuff I didn't consciously do. A lot of this stuff I just kind of did by accident because either it's just over time or it's just part of my personality. Because if I look at a lot of the things that I'm into in life, like music, movies, social history, perfume, even my job to some extent, hairdressing. I've always obsessively broken things down and analyze like obsessively analytical about things and just broken them down, worked out how they work. That's kind of just my kind of personality. And the things that I get into, like hobbies and things, and things that I enjoy, I obsessively break them down. I think it's kind of important to mention that clearly I'm not an authority. I'm just putting this video together. I think no, I think we all are always learning. I think there's bound to be people watching this who are much more experienced than I. But I think it's a bit like learning a language in a sense, and I think that you never really have a finished product, and you're always kind of learning. So we can always learn. Um, for me, I still struggle with a lot of florals, to be honest. The obvious ones I'm all right with, but some of the kind of white florals, I end up just sort of saying white florals because I don't really know the difference between like one and the other. The obvious things like iris, peony, jasmine, rose. I can pick them, but there's a lot that I can't. So everyone is kind of always learning, and it's a constant kind of process of just kind of education and getting better, I guess, and practice. Just like say with a language, every conversation is an opportunity to learn and experience and learn. And same with perfumes. Every fragrance, pound shop body spray or triple figure niche is an experience to smell something and learn from it. So I'm not really like a super authority. I just thought I'd put this together. So there's going to be like four or five things to do. So number one, it might seem kind of obvious, but just smell everything around you. Every day is an opportunity to train your nose. Smell everything around you, but don't just smell it. Like consciously smell it and analyze what this smell is and what it's doing. What does it make you feel like? What does it do to your mood? What makes each facet of that smell the way it does? And you can start this really easily and cheaply if you've got like a spice cabinet or a cupboard that you keep like cooking ingredients in. Just go and raid it. Just go and raid that cupboard and smell every single one like separately. And then once you've got everything out and smelt them all, smell the cabinet. Smell the empty cabinet. Can you smell the wood of the cabinet? Can you smell the residue and the leftover of the spice? If you've got an olive oil bottle, smell the contents of the bottle and then smell the residue on the lid. Is there something about that lid that makes it kind of feel, that kind of greasy, gooey stickiness? But what is it that makes you feel, ugh, compared to when you smell it in the bottle and go, well, that's pleasant. What facets of each smell are making you have those feelings like, oh, that's gross, oh, that's sharp, that's bitter, that's nice, that's sweet, that's spicy, whatever. Break each smell down into its facets and what each facet does. If something smells spicy but it has a hint of woodiness, you just really kind of tear apart these smells, really basically consciously smell. So it's different from just smelling, like, because you can just smell all day long everything around you, but consciously smell. So when you notice a smell, really kind of focus in on what is that smell, what is it doing to you, how does it make you feel, and then what parts of it are making you feel those things. So if you smell something that you think smells nice, what is it about that smell that is nice? If you notice something that smells kind of slightly like gross, what is it that makes you feel gross? Break down every scent that you smell. Basically, you can practice all day long with everything you smell just by doing this and just breaking it down into, absurd analytical kind of stages, I guess. But this is, a really good way to practice, and it's completely free. If you go to the supermarket, walk into the fruit aisle, break it down. What are you smelling? Obviously, you're smelling fruit, but what are you smelling? Are you smelling the fruit? Are you smelling the leaves of the fruit? What are the greens of the veg and the salad? And what is different between all of those things? The woodiness, the fruitiness, the sweetness. And then break that down further. Is the sweetness sugary, or is it creamy, or is it fruity? How are these scents made up? You have to do this every day, and you can do this every day totally for free just by living your life. But just instead of just kind of passively kind of coasting through smells, consciously start smelling. Like, open your mind to the smells around you, and consciously smell them. So that's kind of one, and it's free and easy to do, and everyone can do it every day. So number two, and obviously the most kind of probably even more obvious than number one, is smell a lot of fragrances, smell a lot of perfume. Through smelling a lot of perfume, you can experience different sort of interpretations and different ways of presenting something, and different ways of presenting smells and sort of pairings and the way things match up together. Notice which things go well together, which things don't really go well together, and which things don't go well together, but because of that they do go well together. Notice these things about perfume, but just try and slowly sort of pick up on that. Probably a better starting place with actual perfumes is to try and kind of start picking out individual notes of perfumes. And one of the best ways to do that is go on Fragrantica, get a perfume that you really like, go on Fragrantica and read its notes, and say it's got vetiver, and then find another perfume you've got that's got vetiver, spray them both, and then cross-reference, until you can pick the vetiver in each fragrance perfectly. And do that with all the notes, just cross-reference perfumes so that you can see which fragrances are using different interpretations of notes. So okay, this is vetiver, but this is vetiver, but this vetiver smells slightly different, but they're still clearly both vetiver. Pick the vetiver first and then separate everything else away from it and home in on that vetiver and see what it is about it that is presented in such a way. And this is a really good way of sort of learning about individual notes, or rather than say individual notes, like individual chords rather. This is quite an expensive way to go about it, but you don't have to buy bottles of perfume. A really good way is just, because obviously you want to smell as much as possible, really. Like that's the kind of the goal here, is just smell as much as possible and then see as many different representations and presentations as possible. So think samples, sample packs all over the internet. You can get samples of 2ml things for dead cheap. You don't have to go expensive. Decants, again, really cheap way of doing it. And also just go to the department store, and that's free. You can smell as much as you like there completely for free. Spray them on a card, stick all of those blotters when you get those spray cards, stick them all in your bag so that when you get home you've got hundreds. Write down what's on it, cross-reference them with Fragrantica, so you can go, right, okay, this one has got patchouli, let's find another one in here that's got patchouli, and it's cost you nothing, and you can smell an awful lot of perfumes that way and learn an awful lot about the way individual chords are presented in perfumes. So that's probably number two. So number 3, this is a bit more kind of into it, I guess. But you could buy perfume ingredients. Now, this is a tricky one, and I don't just suggest like busting out there and just buying loads of ingredients, because some of them are really expensive, some of them are really cheap, but another problem is that some of them are really going to surprise you and not smell the way you expect them to smell. A really good example of that is things like rose oxide. Now, if you were to read that on a a sheet, rose oxide, oh, I'm going to buy that, you might expect it to come smelling like a rose. Well, you're going to be like sorely surprised. It's not. It doesn't smell at all like a rose. So it is a bit difficult, but this I think is a little bit more advanced, because you can start off simple with perfume ingredients, and that's what I would recommend doing. Like buy some of the big hitters that are cheap, like things like patchouli, bergamot, cedar. These are cheap and you can smell them. And the good thing about doing this is you get to smell the notes individually by themselves, without any kind of, padding, or you don't have to separate them in a perfume, because it's all you can smell. And I think this, if you do this, this is probably like a slightly kind of more, so you have to be more into it to do this. But I think if you do this, you're probably going to be ahead of like 99% of people. I mean, how many people do you hear say like things like, oh, that you read it on sort of the internet all the time, on like base notes forums and fragrantica forums and groups and stuff, and people are like, oh, Isoe, this perfume's cheap Isoe Super, it's just an Isoe bomb, it's just an Ambrafix bomb or whatever, and they're just chucking it out, and you think, have you actually smelt Isoe Super? Because it probably doesn't smell like you imagine. I've got Isoe here. It smells, woody, a little bit like orange, actually. Sort of bit cedary, but also a bit sharp and vinegary. Like how many people actually have really sort of sat down and smelt these things? So by doing this, you can learn. Okay, that's what Isoe Super smells like. So then you can sort of learn to recognise that in a perfume, and it'll be quite surprising. I think I think if you do this, it'll be quite surprising that some notes really don't smell how you expect them, and I think what this probably will do the most for you is make you realise how many individual notes in a perfume are not notes at all, and in fact they're like combinations of several different like chemicals and things that create them almost to make a fantasy out of several different things smashed together. And sometimes they can be entirely unrelated. One note in particular is that amber. I always find amber in perfume amazing, how it tends to, you can tend to smell like an amber over different perfumes, and maybe it's because they're using like something from Firmenich or something like that. But even if it's sort of like bespoke ambers and things that they've made themselves out of their own kind of formulas, ambers always tend to smell quite similar, but they use all sorts of different ingredients to make amber. You're generally looking at like kind of lanthanum and things like that to help you make that amber smell. So it's quite, you might be quite surprised. Things like ambergris will probably surprise you. Things like styrax, Hyrax, civet would probably surprise a lot of people if you smell that raw. It doesn't really smell like what you'd expect. Castoreum is another one that would probably surprise a lot of people. Say rose oxide is a good one. Birch tar is one of my favourite like individual perfume ingredients. That really doesn't smell how you expect. Birch tar is generally you use it to sort of make smoke, but birch tar smells like barbecue sauce. If you smell it, it smells just like barbecue sauce. It smells absolutely artificial, like a kind of E number barbecue sauce. Smells like a cheap E-number fueled barbecue sauce that you would get in from like a takeaway or like a fast food restaurant or something. But it's a natural ingredient and it's used to make smoke. So you definitely be surprised. So that's number three. Perfume ingredients. I do think be careful if you do that route, and I would say 100% just buy the essentials, like cheap essentials. The better way to go here, say like a cheap patchouli, a cheap vetiver, because vetiver can be quite expensive, but you can definitely get cheap vetiver. Just get like a cheap patchouli, a cheap vetiver, a cheap bergamot, things like this. Some of the big hitters in perfume that are often always used. And cedar is another one that's relatively cheap, or you can get relatively cheap. These are big hitters that you'll smell in a lot of different perfumes, and you can get them separately. You can smell what they're like separately and learn what they smell like separately. Then you can apply that memory to perfume, and you can sort of that will definitely help you pick notes. So and also whilst you're at it, why not start making perfume, because that's a really fun hobby. So yeah, and number four is like the last thing, and this one is kind of more personal for me, like what I do. And I'm going to explain this, and it might seem a bit abstract, but actually it's quite like logical when you think about it. But so when I've always done this with music, and I basically applied it to perfumes. When I used to play music in like improvised kind of sort of free noise jazz band kind of thing, and I used to like visualize the room in front of me into like a cube, and then I would visualize the sound and how it's fitting into that cube, so that I'd know where to play. So to sort of explain, like the bass would be like on the bottom of that cube, and it would fill up a large amount of that bottom, because that's what the sound would do in the room. And then the higher scratchier notes would kind of be on the top, and then I would sort of, in this kind of simplified example, I would then see like, okay, there's a space between there that I can play in, so then I would make a sound that would fit in that, and then I would make sure I was never playing on top of people. And I basically apply this to perfume as well. And when you smell a perfume, so you got the cube, and then smell the perfume, and then where does each smell sit in that cube? Like visualize it and break it down. So if you've got something like a strong woody or vanilla note, it's probably going to be on the bottom, quite big, and it's probably going to, think about what role it plays. It's probably going to have some sort of supporting role. It's going to be like a strong foundation for the perfume and hold it all together and hold it all up. And then, if you've got like some erratic kind of spice, like that's going to be on top and kind of flitting around maybe. So work out, okay, the notes in between that are holding it all up and holding it together and making it into a structure. Visualize it and understand it, and sort of see the structure in your head. That's kind of how I visualize perfume when I smell it. And I think it's a really good idea to do that. I think it really helps. I think it helps you with roles. Like I say, like if you smell something big and heavy in the bottom, and you can sort of visualize that, you can see that it's like a foundation. It's holding it all up. It's keeping, it's giving the rest of the perfume something to sit on and build off. And it's the same with like the erratic notes. Okay, so what is that role? What is it? Is it adding, like fascination, because it's clearly not supporting anything. It's too light. It's too erratic. So what is it doing in the perfume? And think about those roles. Is it, if it's adding fascination, what sort? Is it fresh? Is it sharp? Is it dangerous? Is it mysterious? Is it dark? Is it, what is it doing? Is it spicy? What's it doing to that perfume? What's its role? Because if you think like a good perfume, or really any perfume, but a good perfume, every scent in that perfume will have its own role and will be doing something intentionally to enhance the smell. So break it down, visualize it, and analyze it what is each one doing. If you've got the strong vanilla on the bottom with the strong wood, there's your support. Okay, so that's, I understand what that's doing in the perfume. Next, what's this kind of like leather doing here, and these kind of florals in the middle, what are they doing? They're kind of padding, they're padding things out, giving things kind of depth and dimension. And then you've got this kind of sharper note on the side. What's that doing, and where is it in my structure? What's its purpose? And then, so if you've seen my reviews, you might notice that I say things like, it's just underneath or just to the side, and this all comes from this kind of visualization of breaking a perfume down and visualizing it and analyzing it in this way. And I think this is a really good way to do it. I think it's a really good exercise. So I've always done it like just as, like, because that's just the way my mind works. Like logical, analytical, obsessively kind of breaking things down to their kind of minor components, and understanding what their role is in the bigger picture. And I do think that you can apply it to perfume, and say that if you can visualize it, you can work out the structure of the perfume and exactly what it's doing on like every level, really. I mean, in a sense, you are kind of applying your own rules and your own kind of ideas, but that's okay. You don't have to, if the perfumer didn't intend this note to be doing what you think it does, it doesn't matter. That's just your interpretation. It's fine. There's no right or wrong. It's just how you're visualizing it and how you're interpreting it. Just go for that. Say like perfumery is highly subjective, so you're never really wrong, which is a great thing. So yeah, that's my kind of 4 things that I would say how to train your nose. In kind of retrospect, if you think about it, basically just consciously smell. Consciously smell things. Make sure that when you are smelling things, you're kind of asking questions and breaking things down. I think it always helps to break things down to their fundamentals, and really sort of break things down and break things down and break things down until you're at the kind of lowest point, and then you can kind of, it just helps you to understand what each kind of step is doing and what its role in the perfume is. So yeah, I hope it helped. And I say, like, I'm definitely not an authority. I'm always learning, same as you, same as everyone else, same as like master perfumers. It's kind of the joy of this kind of stuff, right? It's like a lifetime's of education. You might think you're pretty decent at it, but there's always more to learn. Like with language, every conversation is an opportunity to learn and gain understanding, and perhaps new perspective. And it's the same with perfume. Every perfume you smell, just a new opportunity to learn something. So yeah, I hope it helps. If you have your own tips of training this kind of thing, chuck them in the comments. Share what you think helps and what doesn't help, and what confuses you, and what you struggle with, what notes you struggle with. Like, say for me, florals. Like, I'm not big on them. I struggle with florals. Said some of the obvious ones are okay, but once you get outside of that, I struggle. A lot of time I just don't even know what they are. Don't even know what the flowers are. So I don't really understand flowers too much. So everyone has things that they can do and they can't do. So yeah, if you've got just chuck it in the comments, ways that you can help each other improve, and the things that you get stuck on. So yeah, thanks for watching. I hope it helps. Cheers. Nice one.